Dear students, welcome to lecture 10 on molecular rearrangements. In this unit, we are going to study different types of molecular rearrangement and try to understand how molecular framework is rearranged, what are the different types of molecular rearrangements and how we can understand them. So let us begin this. First, let us try to understand what is rearrangements and how does this term apply to molecular rearrangements. The process of changing the position, time or order of something is generally known as rearrangements. When this is applied to molecular reactions, it is known as molecular rearrangements. Generally, in molecular rearrangements, the position of the atoms and their order is arranged. Generally, we have seen earlier that in chemical reactions, atoms generally react to fulfill their valency, and that is the number of electrons in the outer shell available to the atom. So for hydrogen this is a doublet, and for mostly for other atoms this is an octet, also known as octet rule. But even after that, molecules in which valencies of all the atoms are satisfied or are more or less also reactive. Can you tell why this could be so? The answer comes from the thermodynamics and kinetics of the system as a whole. So we find that any mixture of compounds will react further if that reaction leads to more stable products or systems, and provided we provide the necessary activation energy, or that activation energy could already be present within the system as a function of its temperature and pressure and other factors. So molecular rearrangements are no exception to these rules. Molecular rearrangements happen because they lead to more stable products or systems as a whole. So how molecular rearrangements are further classified and how we can better understand them. So let us see that generally reactions which involve shuffling or rearrangements of bonding between various atoms is known as molecular rearrangements. For example, we can take the following reaction in which 3-dimethyl-1-butene, when treated under acidic conditions, will undergo Markovnikov's addition of the proton at the terminal CH2. This will be followed by the formation of the carbocation, but the initially formed carbocation is a secondary carbocation which is rearranges into a tertiary carbocation because this is more stable, and this is then further attacked by the chloride ion to give you the 2-chloro-3-methyl-butane. In this we see that the carbon skeleton has rearranged itself into a more stable product. So this can be called as a rearrangement reaction. So there are different types of molecular rearrangements. So the rearrangements which mostly involve rearrangement of the carbon skeleton, this could be happening mostly due to the migration of atoms or groups mostly containing carbon to either electron deficient oxygen. For this, a general reaction can be cited in which oxygen is attached to a leaving group, and these bars indicate lone pairs. They are not a negative charge. This is the usual way of representing a lone pair in Marvin's sketch. Leaving group will leave and a migrating group will migrate to the oxygen, leaving behind a carbocation which will further react. But rearrangements might happen in which the migrating group, instead of moving to the oxygen, may move to an electron deficient nitrogen. In such a reaction, the leaving group leaves apart and the migrating group migrates to the electron deficient nitrogen, and leaving behind this Schiff's base like compound. Or rearrangements might also take place in which the migrating group moves to an electron deficient carbon, especially a carbocation or a carbene. Once a carbocation is formed, the migrating group moves to that electron deficient carbon to give you a rearranged carbocation which further reacts with any reagents that are present in the reaction. But in addition to these, there are other molecular rearrangements in which the migration may take place from boron to different places, or it could be free radical rearrangement, or it could be rearrangements involving anions, or it could be concentrated rearrangements. These are further classified into sigmatropic rearrangements, electrocyclic rearrangements, and pericyclic rearrangements. Pericyclic rearrangements can be enhanced by the photochemical mechanism or thermal mechanism. All details of these reactions are given in the books written here. But for our syllabus, we will be more or less focusing to these three different types of molecular rearrangement, that is migration of atoms mostly to electron deficient oxygen or nitrogen or carbon. So let us begin this study by studying the first molecular rearrangement, also known as Wagner-Merwin rearrangement. In this, the migration takes place to electron deficient carbon, and this therefore involves rearrangement of the carbon skeleton. As an example, if we take a look at this neopentyl bromide, under a typical SN2 reaction conditions, that is the presence of a strong base, we find that this expected product is formed very slowly, and it is not at all formed in any appreciable amount. So this is we have studied in the POC1, where we understood why the nucleophilic attack at this carbon center is hindered because of the steric factors. But if the same compound is treated with water under acidic conditions, these conditions are suitable for SN1 reaction, which proceed through carbocation. Instead of obtaining the expected substitution product, we obtain a rearranged product, which is an isomer of the neopentyl alcohol is formed. So how can we explain the formation of this new product? So that means we want to understand what is the mechanism of the Wagner-Merwin rearrangement. In this reaction, we find that the neopentyl bromide, in this reaction we find that the neopentyl bromide, because of the polar solvent, first dissociates slowly to give the corresponding carbocation and the bromide ion. This carbocation reacts further 1,2-methyl shift to form another tertiary carbocation. This then reacts with water molecule to give you the rearranged product, which loses a proton to give the 2-methyl butanol. So I am leaving this question for you to answer, and I am asking you to propose a reaction mechanism for the following reactions, and this we will discuss further in the class. So let us move to another molecular rearrangement, that is pinacolone rearrangement. Here the migration of the groups takes place to an electron deficient carbon. So in this pinacolone rearrangement, a vicinal diol is converted into a ketone. So this is how we can understand that reaction. Pinacols, which are vicinal diols, that means they have hydroxyl groups on two adjacent carbon atoms. Under slightly acidic conditions, they will react to form the protonated pinacol. This will lose a molecule of water to form the carbocation, which will rearrange and lose a proton to give the ketone, which is known as pinacolone. Now, similar reaction will take place with any other suitable vicinal diol. For example, here this molecule contains an additional phenyl group. So when this is treated under acidic conditions, the hydroxyl group gets first protonated. It loses a molecule of water to form the carbocation. But this carbocation can further rearrange to give you a more stable structure. In this reaction, the pi cloud of the benzene ring attaches to the carbocation to form another carbocation, which is stabilized by resonance. I leave it up to you to draw these different resonance structures for this intermediate. This then further rearranges to lose a proton and give the corresponding pinacolone. Here you will find that the phenyl group has shifted from the lower carbon atom to the upper carbon atom, and this phenyl group preferentially migrates instead of the methyl group because it leads to a more stabilized resonance structure, which is stabilized by the resonance of the aromatic ring. Now in this question I am asking you to draw a mechanism in which you can explain that this ketone can be formed by the vicinal diol under acidic conditions, but it can also be obtained by treating this aldehyde under acidic conditions and slightly heating the reaction mixture to give that ketone. Now let us move to another molecular rearrangement known as Hofmann rearrangement. In this rearrangement, groups migrate to electron deficient nitrogen. and mostly you will find that in this rearrangement, that is Hofmann rearrangement, an amide is converted into an amine, but the amine has one carbon less than the starting amide. This we can represent like this, that the amide under basic conditions reacts with bromine to give the corresponding amine with one carbon less, which is lost as carbon dioxide or carbonate ion. An example is like this: pyridium to carboxamide reacts with bromine under basic conditions to give the pyridine 3 amine. So the mechanism of this reaction is slightly involved, but if you pay close attention, it is easier to understand than it appears in the beginning. So in the first step, under extremely basic conditions, a proton from the amino group of the amide is abstracted to give you that intermediate. This is stabilized by resonance. But this highly nucleophilic anionic species reacts with bromine molecule to displace a bromide ion and give you a brominated intermediate, which further reacts with another molecule of the hydroxide ion, and this proton on the nitrogen is abstracted to give you the corresponding anionic intermediate with negative charge on the nitrogen. This intermediate then loses a bromine atom to give you a very electron deficient nitrogen atom. The existence of this intermediate is skeptical, which, because this nitrogen is highly electron deficient, the R group moves or shifts to the nitrogen to give the isocyanate intermediate. Now the existence of this intermediate is highly doubtful, because people have suggested that this loss of bromine atom and the migration of the nitrogen need not necessarily take place as two steps, but they happen simultaneously. That means the R group pushes the bromine out in one step. So once the alkyl isocyanate has formed, it reacts with water to give you the carbamate derivative. This will lose a molecule of carbon dioxide to give the corresponding amine with one carbon less. Then you predict the product of this reaction and also solve this assignment question. Now let us move to the next molecular rearrangement, that is Beckmann rearrangement. This involves the rearrangement of a group to an electron deficient nitrogen, just like a Hofmann rearrangement. But in this reaction, an aromatic ketone is converted into an amide via an oxime. So let us see how this happens. Initially, you treat a ketone like acetophenone with hydroxylamine. That will generate the acetophenone oxime with the carbon nitrogen double bond and NOH group. Under strongly acidic condition, this oxygen is first protonated, but bad leaving group is converted into a good leaving group, and that soon rearranges because the phenyl ring migrates onto the electron deficient nitrogen and the water molecule leaves, giving us this intermediate carbocation, which further reacts with the water molecule to form the amide, rearranged amide. So using this mechanism and understanding, can you predict the product of the following reaction? Next molecular rearrangement that we are going to understand is the Beer-Willinger rearrangement. In this, migration of groups takes place to electron deficient oxygen, and this is very useful to convert some ketones into esters. As an example, acetophenone, when treated with peroxytrifluoroacetic acid, which is a highly acidic compound and an oxidizing agent, under organic gets converted into phenyl acetate. Similarly, cyclohexanone, when treated with peracetic acid, will get oxidized and a ketone will get converted into an ester. This cyclic ester is also known as eta-caprolactone. Now let us understand what is the mechanism of this Beer-Willinger rearrangement. Under acidic conditions, the acetophenone is first protonated. This is then attacked by the trifluoroperoxyacetic acid, and it gives rise to the formation of this intermediate with a tetrahedral carbon here. This will further get protonated at this oxygen to give that intermediate. So this becomes a good leaving group then, and therefore it is lost to the medium. But while that happens, the phenyl ring migrates to this electron deficient oxygen to give us that carbocation intermediate, but which is our resonating structure is like this, which will lose a proton to give the corresponding phenyl acetate. So our next lecture will be on chemistry of heterocyclic aromatic compounds. See you then. Thank you.